Okay, so we have the two Titan 440 models here, the original design and the newer Titan 440 released this year. So we're going to go over the feature differences and how the two pumps are a bit different and the improvements that have been made. First off, the newer 440 has a brushless motor. Brushless motors handle power differences better, they're more durable, and so they last longer and they don't have as many issues if you're running them off of inconsistent power sources like generators or even just home power in new construction that isn't as predictable and might have surges or changes. So nicer, more durable electric motor on there. The motor is also 7 pounds lighter. So the weight difference between the two units is actually pretty significant when you're trying to lift them and carry them around. 7 pounds can save you quite a bit. The fluid filter on the newer model is vertical and threads in over the stick in the middle there. So that is nice for a couple reasons. You're going to get less paint trapping in your fluid section. So on the older model, you had a horizontal filter here. So a couple things could happen with that filter. When you were flushing, you can get paint to kind of stick in there. And then if you're doing like significant color changes or even material changes, that can result in discoloration between your color changes. And then it's also not quite as clean when you're just running the pump without pulling the filter. Additionally, pulling the filter on this one was a bit more of a hassle because the paint could leak out through here. But by going vertical on that filter, you eliminate that issue. The dump valves on the two models, the dump valve has been changed slightly. The actual design is the same component-wise as far as how it was built, but the difference is this is a slower release valve. So when you release this, it's not much of a click. It's more of a slow release versus the original that's a more click valve. Now you can kind of try to slow that release down, but it's not as easy. And it also, on the newer one, has a pulsation dampener at the end of your return line. And the purpose of that is when you're doing pressure release, when the pump's at full pressure and you go to release this valve because you're done spraying, this valve is going to be more forgiving. You're not going to get as much kickback on your return lines. So that can keep you from getting paint all over you when you're kind of releasing the pressure back to the bucket or changing paint. So dump valve improvement there is a nice way to help with some of that kickback that happens when you're releasing the pump under pressure. The fluid sections are also a bit different in redesign. So this is the newer fluid section. This just comes off here. You know, with just a simple spanner wrench, you can pull that off and change your fluid section with hardly any tools. The original one, you had to go ahead and pop off some screws here and here and here to get into and remove the fluid section. So it was a lot more work, not quite as field capable of removing the fluid section. They did keep the old pusher valves that free up the lower ball on the unit. So if your ball gets stuck, which can happen, these units still feature that ball unfreezer, which is a unique feature to the 440. The Graco's equivalents don't have that. The brushless motor is also unique for this model type. The on-off switch on this is a bit more protected. So on the old version, you can see the on-off switch actually extends out from the body of the pump. So if you were kind of rough around the job site or whatever, you could technically bump this out a little bit easier. This one's shielded a bit to keep you from having that issue. The gauge on the side shows you kind of low pressure and regular tip pressures. It comes with an HEA tip, which is the low pressure tips. The original one doesn't have a low pressure tip setting. They're also saying on the newer model, there's a pressure adjustment setup in here that automatically adjusts your pump output and performance based on tip wear. So if you're running a 15 thousandths tip for 100 to 300 gallons, you start to wear that tip, the pump's going to be able to detect that extra opening that needs more pump power to provide the right amount of material, and we'll adjust accordingly. Now you still don't want to go over the 23 thousandths tip, max recommended tip for the pump, but it's there as a feature. So you got a lighter unit, and then finally the handle on top, you can actually swing this to the direction of your choice by turning that screw and loosening it and then twisting this. So you got a lighter pump with a better motor, an upgraded dump valve, easier to clean, more forgiving filter housing, and a quicker change fluid section compared to the old version of the pump. So we'll show it to you spraying, but realistically spraying is spraying. The pump's going to do a great job to pull material and spray, but these improvements make it a little easier to change, a little more efficient to clean, more forgiving on pressure release. And so that's what your improvements are in this new Titan 440 series. So we'll go ahead and get this pump kind of primed and show you it in action. So I'm using Sherwin-Williams Emerald here. All right, so we're at full pressure. I'm going to go ahead and show you what releasing that pressure would look like with this new valve. So normally a valve would tend to blow off a lot of paint at you when you go ahead to release it. With this new valve, it's a very smooth and even release. So now I'll repressurize it. With this particular one here, we have the HEA zone, which will be for your kind of lighter tips, your non-high pressure tips. On the handle, there's a little dimple there to show you where you are on the pressure gauge. So this is on the HEA setting. Gun comes standard with the HEA tip and the 4-finger trigger. And then my pressure gauge is here. We'll get the water through the gun to show you the paint at low pressure. You can hear the pump turning, but it's a little quieter. So we're at that low pressure now in the HEA tip. You can see it's holding, doesn't have a lot of pressure on it right now. So we'll bump that up. That's full pressure. So you can see it compensating to keep pressure up. And then it sprays pretty well. So the pressure release valve is a nice feature. Pressure holds steady and consistent. Sprays just like the old 440. It's lighter, has a nice top handle, HEA zone on the gauge, easy release dump valve to keep you from dealing with blowback when you're dumping paint out of the line, a nicer filter to clean. All right, so we'll go ahead and get ready to clean up. So I'll go ahead and kill the pressure here. I'll pop the pressure release valve. As you notice, it doesn't dump heavily. Then we'll go ahead and flip this over into our cleaning water here. And the new unit has a rapid flush here. So you just put in the rapid clean. You'll see the paint flow through the pump. Once we're happy with the pump being clean, we'll flush the hose. All right, we'll switch it over to the hose. We'll clean out the line. And that's the Titan 440. It's brushless, easier to clean filter, less paint trapping, slow release on your dump valve there, handle switches, lighter profile. So great job on this, we think. It's a good option if you've always been a 440 guy. The new 440 gives you some nice upgrades.